This is John Levering with Chimney Check Professionals. This is the video portion of my inspection. This is where I take a look at the inner walls of the chimney system, otherwise known as the flue. The camera is at the very top, and this is a spark arrestor. Without having really full access to that spark arrestor, and then of course that top piece being added onto it, a little difficult for me to say whether or not this is the correct one, but everything about the spark arrestor that I see on the outside and the type of chimney I see here tells me that that is an incorrect spark arrestor. It's also very constrictive. When I first walk into the house, I smell smoke, I smell fireplace. Indicative of a fireplace that is not drafting correctly and has back drafting issues. How noticeable it is when the fireplace is on, that's kind of an unknown. What I can tell you without question is the smoke smell is evident, at least throughout, from the entryway or where I entered the house on through to this living room area. I believe this is in our living room, or the family room, I'm not sure. Regardless, part of that issue is the top that we see. That may be all of the issue. We also have a metal chimney system at the top, about 5 feet of it. It's one of those things where I can't tell exactly what surrounds that metal. Is it brick or is it a frame chase? If it's a frame chase, I would basically be saying that we don't have enough room for this particular chimney to be within it. If it's masonry over it, it doesn't really meet the design of the metal chimney either. So a little bit unknown as far as the exact condition of the chimney from where the extension took place. I'm assuming there was an extension on this chimney, possibly for drafting purposes. That I have no way of really knowing if that's the reason somebody did it, but I'm assuming that. That might have been a, quote, correction, which really didn't correct it, at least not based on what I can see. Here is the system is so dirty, it's a little difficult for me to tell if I see an adapter cone. I don't think I do. I think this is just kind of masonry or mortar slope in that sort of shape. This is, I believe it's a pumice tile system based on what I can see. Again, it's so dirty, it's a little difficult to tell, but this does have the appearance of pumice tiles. We have gaps between the tiles. We're not supposed to have gaps between the tiles. What I am certainly going to be able to tell you is that there is work to be done for this system to function as it should, and there's work to be done for it to meet its fire safety standards. The extent of that work is going to be a bit out of my ability because I can't see what's between the metal chimney, the outer wall, and the finished material that we see out there. So I can't tell you to what extent that was done incorrectly. But again, I can tell you work is needed if we're going to meet fire safety standards and if this system is going to actually draft correctly. And again, I believe that's a pumice tile system. They're about 1 foot tall each, and again, there are gaps between those tiles. We shouldn't have those gaps between the tiles. As far as structural goes, it's a lot of masonry, and it does move when I push on it. It doesn't move as much as many. Doesn't move as much as I would have expected it to, but it does move. I would basically call for a correction, and I think it should be designed by an engineer, structural engineer. There needs to be, as I see it, based on the height of the system, the size of it, what it's made of, and the fact that I can actually get it to move. There is a need for some sort of brace or structural modifications to this system in the event of an earthquake. So we have fire safety, we have structural, and we definitely have some unknowns as well. Not really standard to extend the chimney the way that it was done based on what I can see. I would expect to see engineering, a permit, something to justify that extension. And this is the bottom of our flue system. Where it meets our smoke chamber. Smoke chamber doesn't look really bad at all, but it definitely is very dirty. This is a very used system, or at least it has been in the past. When we look inside the firebox, there's been modifications to the actual firebox itself. What I'm speaking of is the finished material around it. There is a hollowness to this finished material, and there are gaps where the finished materials meet the firebox. That means heat can get into these gaps. Where those gaps lead to, unknown. The gaps shouldn't be there regardless. Is there wood framing behind these areas? I have no way of knowing. Without being some sort of soothsayer, all I can tell you is if we know that there's wood as the backing and support for this, then there is a correction to do. It's a bit of an unknown. There's no way for me to be able to tell you that. Here I just see masonry, and we see gaps on the right side as well. This is the best view I'm able to get. There's a damper right here. We have a back wall that has some gaps between surfaces. Not enough for me to make a big deal of, but we should seal those gaps. So, all in all, we have a system that's not meeting fire safety standards, it's not meeting drafting purposes, and structurally, there's been some modifications that may or may not have been sanctioned and engineered by the city or by a structural engineer and the city. And the modification, depending on what it's made of, if it's made of wood framing, it's not enough space for that chimney to be in there, basically the top 4.5 to 5 feet. So there's definitely a number of question marks that I cannot answer for you at this point. The fact that there is a good degree of work needed, that would be the time to answer those questions, because that's when some dismantling would need to be done at the very top. And from there, one would be able to see more, and then there may be more removal of the chimney needed after that and reconstruction. That's going to be a bit of an unknown. Ensure you review, at least it's an unknown right now. Ensure you review my written report for my findings and recommendations.